G2 is by far the best team. They play so well together because they all know how to play the game correctly, and we're just a step behind.
I think Kikis is an upgrade in terms of everything, really.
Yeah, I really think Kikis is helping because he's a really positive guy and he's also good in game and he talks a lot in game. He always tries to cheer everyone up.
I think best player is Mitty.
That was sexy, you know, combo meter is 100% right there. Temper Fate on 3 members plus his own jungler.
Champion player is really good as well.
Honestly, I'm pretty sure if you put Yellowstar with Sven and you put me with Reckless, the lane itself wouldn't change much.
The worst thing that can happen is a ties, so ties are okay, but loss what happened.
If we wanna get up second place, we should win G2.
Hello everyone from Berlin, Germany to wherever you are around the world. With just 5 series left to play here in week 9, it's all on the line in his last chance dance to climb in the standings. Everyone is super hyped to see where all of our teams are going to end up today, as they were enjoying the Berlin sun just a moment ago. And there's a breakfast banter on Facebook Live this morning with our casters, where you could ask them a lot of interesting questions, as well as the Unicorns of Love cosplayers from the fan club Love Hurts. They're always here and always cheering their team on. 9 weeks, 170 games, 3,927 kills, and nearly 376,000 minions slaughtered. 1 Urgot pick, and it all comes down to this. The final day of the European LCS Summer Split. I'm EpicSkillshot supporter, joined here at the analyst desk by Mitch Kreppel-Voorspels and Martin de Fischer Lunge. Whew, say something, I'm out of breath.
Do you have a personal fan club as well?
Yeah, but I used to have one on my stream, but I don't think that name's appropriate for
Okay.
All right,
let's move on.
Moving on. With only 1 chance left for teams to gain points in the standings, here is all, or how all of it breaks down, rather. All of the playoff spots have been given away, but the teams can still fight for their seeding in those playoffs and the bracket, as well as the teams that are locked in promotion tournament already. Origin and Roccat are also fighting to get or 8th or 9th or 10th, which can be very important down the line.
Oh, definitely important. Obviously, promotion tournament coming next week. If you are last place, you already play on the Thursday. You play 1 BO5. If you lose that one, you are out. You can no longer requalify for LCS. So super important, obviously, for both teams. Yep. Still, I'm not expecting Roccat to suddenly pull a 2-0 victory against Giants, and that's why Origin should feel somewhat safe, but at least they gotta go for that win, see if they can move further up the standings.
Yep, we also have some possible tiebreakers today. H2K Fnatic for 3rd place, Vitality Shalke. Obviously, if they tie in their first match, they play another match after to see who's in the safe zone. And Shalke and OG could also then play a tiebreaker to see who has that 8th spot, which is very important.
Yeah, and that all hinges on the, basically on the result of Shalke versus Vitality. So that will be definitely one of the matches to watch today.
I think it will be the match to watch, honestly. It's super exciting to see 2 teams fighting, where one of them will go down and play promotion tournament and one will get the safe spot. Normally it's Shalke who gets it, but I think Vitality, you know, I mean, actually I think it's really hard to say who's going to win. I think it's a 50-50, honestly. Both teams have been struggling a lot, and I don't think any of the teams like deserve specifically to end up above anyone else.
It's also one of those matches where usually when things go wrong, you go like, okay, next week, you know, we'll go like, yeah, this is unlucky.
No next week.
But this is the first time where in a game, if things start going sour, that you know, like, okay, if we lose this game, it's relegation time.
Yep.
And for a lot of players, that can mess with their head.
True. There will be no next time. And sadly, there will be no next World Championship, at least not in 2016 for Origin, as they have lost all of their championship points. 70 points. They did so well in spring, and it's all down the drain now for them.
Yeah, lost the bot lane, lost an AD carry this split, and now lost all the championship points. Everything has gone horribly wrong for Origin, honestly. And I guess the only highlight for them is if they can avoid getting 10th place.
Yeah, and for people watching this graphic here, what we have to point out, this is how the points would be divided if the split ends right now. Obviously, the points get awarded after playoffs, so things can change around. But it does look like if Fnatic does reasonably well in playoffs and G2 end up winning, that they're second in points.
Yeah.
And then the logical result be that Splice then has to go into the regional qualifier.
Yeah, because they have 50 already, and they could get 50 if they get to the semifinals, which would mean that Splice and Giants would have to go through the gauntlet. We'll see if that happens.
I mean, I think Splice and Giants are okay with that, honestly, even though they've been doing so well this split. Because right now, if you look at the gauntlet setup, Splice would be the strongest team, judging right now. And they would also get like a lot of points, getting a top 4 spot that would be pretty far down the list.
Yeah, Splice would get a really good seeding in that gauntlet. I think this is all speculative of how well they do in playoffs, but like under the assumption that they make it to the finals, which I think is honestly very realistic. They'll get a good seeding into the gauntlet. They get so much information from all the teams that played before. The only caveat is then I think they're the only European team that gets a seed 3 into Worlds, which makes me very sad. So I hope that somehow
Thanks, G2.
Splice either make it and win. Well, it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah, actually, we got that
it's
seed
true.
anyway.
But if Splice somehow win the split, then they get a preferential seed. Or if they somehow scrape by points, then at least they get a seed 2 into Worlds, which is much better because I think this team has potential.
Yeah, we can discuss a lot about that in the post-game lobby at the end of the day, but we'll see how the dust settles for today as the Giants take on Roccat to start things off in the European LCS arena. And then in the studio, Shalke will be jumping onto the Rift against Vitality. Obviously, we mentioned already, super important match. And we'll close things out with our match of the week, G2 versus Fnatic, which could be very important for first and third place.
Yeah, definitely. We expect, obviously, Giants to win and then suddenly tie Fnatic on points and then actually have more 2-0 victories, meaning Fnatic needs at least 1 point against G2 to lock third. And if they get 1 point, it means Splice can actually take first place. Then G2 will tie them in points, but Splice will have 10 2-0 victories.
So interesting.
There's so many things going on there.
That's all under the assumption that Splice wins their match 2-0.
Which we also expect, obviously. But yeah.
Yes,
but
of course.
Europe has never had any upsets. No.
No.
Well, Europe, I agree, have had upsets. Splice have not. Like, Splice have actually been so solid and so consistent the last 5 weeks. If they suddenly do not get a 2-0, it's their own fault.
You will shave your head.
I will not shave my head. I'm not betting all that on Splice.
Okay, no direst moment for you. In any case, with the last player of the game point up for grabs today, we want you to weigh in. Tweet at LL Esports with the hashtag EULCS and tell us who is your MVP of the summer split and why, guys.
I'm going to say, early on, I'm going to say Trick. Again, I think he's the best jungler we have in Europe, even in NA as well, just combine the both. He can battle with like Rain over there for like the best spot. I think Trick has been fantastic all split long. He's super important for G2 and everything they do. But I want to also look at a team like Splice. I mean, we need to find someone, you know, really standing out that you can say, okay, this guy actually is a potential MVP as well.
Mickey?
I mean, Mickey definitely comes into that list, but I think for Splice, their strength has always been that like no guy truly stands out. But I think Mickey as a catalyst for Splice and some of the really key plays that he makes in the mid game is very important. But it's always different members for Splice jumping up. The one caveat there, like the Rainover as the only competitor for Trick, I think
jungle spot.
Yeah, for jungler, I think Svenskuna is actually doing really well lately,
agree.
especially in his team fights going in and out, zigzagging there, and Trashy is like improving a lot as a European jungler, so it's getting closer. Playoffs will tell us a lot.
Playoffs will tell us a lot. Worlds will tell us a lot as well. But without further ado, we're going to take a dive into the first matches of the day, starting with Giants and Roccat in the arena. Giants still has a chance to making it to third place, and that would mean that they take on the Unicorns of Love, which I think some teams have said, well, the Unicorns of Love are always risky, but I think you still want to take that bet in terms of a first-round playoff game.
Definitely. I mean, again, if you're Giants for us right now, obviously, they play for seeding. I don't care too much about that specifically. In this week, I care about seeing a Giants team actually showing up big time before playoffs, so I can go into playoff and say, I trust in these guys to do well. After the 1-1 yesterday, I'm a little bit on the fence right now.
They're also playing against a loose cannon in Roccat, in the sense that Roccat have probably mentally given up, checked out, and they're going to play like super comfort picks. Might cheese a little bit, might just do like atypical game styles, you know, because they don't have to adhere to the pure macro sense and the whole like meta style anymore, right? Whereas Giants, going to playoffs, that's exactly what you want to practice. And like when pure meta, when pure like correct gameplay meets like so many variables, sometimes it just goes wrong.
Yeah, we see him here versus Shalke, of course. Dropped the game. Maxor said, we just want to avoid G2, but then they could get tricked because...
Yeah, you don't know where they're going to end, so it's hard to avoid G2. But I mean, avoiding Splice right now could also be a thing you should look for because they've been very, very good. And I don't think suddenly Splice is going to drop the ball the next 3 weeks in practice. We know they're going to scrim G2 almost all the time anyway, so both those teams are going to be really strong.
If anything, I think you want to face G2 because they seem a little bit more random in their approach to the game. They're a bit more like explosive rather than Splice. I feel Splice play like the correct way and they consistently will beat lower tier teams doing so. Whereas there's more variance in G2's play with like people trying to make a play, overextending, you know, trying to be the guy that carries a team. Sometimes like they just have really bad early games too.
It's all about getting third, so you face Unicorns of Love, which is probably the weakest of the playoff teams, and then get top 4, so you get a lot of points for a gauntlet. Like, that's what matters.
Yeah, and for Roccat, it's all about seeding in the promotion tournament. Of course, they need to move up in the standings if they want to avoid playing on day 1. Of course, getting a better kind of parkour there is better for them to stay in the LCS. We'll see what happens. But we're going to move over to the first match in the studio. Shalke and Vitality fighting for last-minute points and basically fighting to stay in the LCS. And those are always some... Oh, that was Dutch. Always some of the most exciting matchups for me in the year, because this is just straight-up duel. Want to stay in the LCS?
This is like our version of the Bastard Bowl, you know? Nobody comes out alive, like 7th place teams. At least we have a team that can rival Liquid in a sense of like moniker
Always
that nobody wants.
place.
Always 7th place. Schalke and Elements. So if you're a betting man, I mean, sometimes you got to look at the history to predict the future. Schalke likely going to end up 7th.
I talked to Nukeduck just before we went live, and he told me that he basically said to Gilius in week 5, I'm going to relegate you. And Gilius was like, no way, you know, they're playing for playoffs and everything. And he just said, you know, today is where the prophecy comes true. Nukeduck, according to himself, is going to beat Schalke and put them down into relegation zone. I'm not so sure. I think it's a 50-50, honestly. Both teams look equally as good.
Yeah, and there was a beautiful there was a beautiful exchange yesterday on Twitter where you lend a helping hand to Gilius and then gave him a big e-hug and wished him good luck.
I mean, like, so Gilius was basically complaining a lot about the system, right? About the tiebreaker system. But I am vehemently against that. I mean, if you want to complain about the system, you have an entire split to do so. If you want to blame the system for not making playoffs, right when you just fall out in 7th place, you should blame yourself. If you're not into playoffs in this European split, it's all your fault because the bottom of the pack was so inconsistent. If you just marginally played better, you would have been in playoffs. However, I completely understand his frustration. It is so disappointing to be this close to playoffs, then fall out, then look at 7th place, and maybe even risk of like next week you got to end up in relegation. And this is coming from somebody who spent too much of his time in relegation.
But like, you shouldn't have lost 13 games the last 5 weeks if you want to make playoffs. And then, first of all, never complain about teams in playoff not being strong enough because you were not strong enough yourself to get there in the first place.
Yeah, he was tweeting that Unicorns of Love were just gonna like insta lose. I'm like, well, if it's that easy to beat them, you know, perhaps you should have been a little bit better and made it into playoffs.
It's like when I watched the Euro Cup in Belgium, and that was like, Wales is not going to win anyway. Doesn't matter. We should have won against them. They're still salty. Vitality, this is who they're up against. Schalke 1-1 yesterday against G2. Hey, they got a win against G2.
Yep.
Albeit G2 maybe didn't put on their best performance, but...
No, game 2, I think there was mainly the draft. I really liked the way Vitality approached game 2, especially in a sense of what globals they brought to the exchange, to the party rather, and they had a lot of good just like CC connecting, you know, and then Fiora was always flanking Sven in these fights. It just all came together for Vitality in game 2, and I like that they had like a proactive composition, whereas like, I don't know what G2 was doing.
Story of the split for Vitality. Great moment, like, hey, you know, they can play League of Legends. And then 2 weeks in a row, it's just completely gone. They win one game again. Honestly, today's all that matters for Vitality. Show up today, knock out Splice. Schalke, I mean, not Splice, they're in top.
No, that would be hard. Not mincing words here today. Let's keep it up. I like it.
I'm just saying, like, this game is so important.
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it.
I think their globals could actually work against Schalke, because I feel if you like, I have this image in my head where Nukeduck pops Destiny and just goes to kill Gilius in the jungle. And
Get the prophecy.
Get the prophecy, and the game is FF.
All right, I'm going to cut you guys off because the players are ready and we want to see some games. So we're going to send it inside and load up for the final clashes of the split and meet our casters. I'm excited.